and welcome to the Connectors Pulse. I am Christine LaVopa, your coach. I am a coach, your host, and it's been a little bit of a long day, but I'm going to tell you I have such a treat for you today. And last week we talked about burnout with Tara Kermit. This week we have Stephanie High, and I'm telling you it's going to have a different flavor because burnout is rampant, but we're going to also talk about resilience and recovery. So I would love to introduce, well, before we introduce, I want to actually ask you, where are you from? Where are you tuning in? And also, have you ever experienced some sort of, I'm going to say burnout, but ever experienced some sort of thing or symptom in your body where you feel like that engine light is going off? So without further ado, here comes Stephanie.
Hi.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, Stephanie, you have the floor. Tell us your title. She's a high-powered woman. She's done all the things from tech to burnout to recovery, and now she helps people recover and be well before burnout. So, Stephanie, tell us what you got.
Yeah, I'm Stephanie High. I am the owner and founder of Kaizen Catalyst. It is a performance psychology coaching business. So I have my master's in performance psychology, and I'm working on my PhD in trauma psychology. So I work at the intersection of trauma and performance. So unlike a therapist who's going to dive into the past and look into where you came from, I acknowledge where you came from, but we're working from here. Where are you today, and how can we propel you into the future? So looking at what you're doing professionally in your personal life and how we can make sure that there's some balance and integration across the board. I also have a couple other businesses as well. So I do work in the technology space. Having those conversations about human-centric design when it comes to AI. And I come from a long 20 plus years of working in the business world in Fortune 50 and Fortune 500 companies, both domestically in the US and internationally. So I've spent probably about half of my adult life living abroad. And so I bring a diverse, complex approach to what I do.
Oh, I love that. There's so much in there. And when we were backstage, we were, getting to know each other, and we immediately hit it off with living abroad because, my husband's a surface warfare officer in the military, and he is, doing his thing, which means that we are the support team at home. And we're currently in Spain. This is our 8th move in 10 years. So you can understand what that stress level comes with. And I think stress is like moving is one of the top 10 things that really stress you out in life, but your career also. So thank you for sharing it. Where are you right now, Stephanie?
I'm in Spokane, Washington.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Okay. How is it over there? It's probably early over there, right?
It is going on 8 a.m. I'm on my second cup of coffee. It is cloudy today, so I have my happy lamp standing by to make sure that I can get through the day.
That you're the first person that's ever said that they had a happy lamp. And
Absolutely.
I know, a lot of people in the tactical athlete community, which could be like military, fire, police, they have happy lamps too. And that's one of the things that they tell you, that to use one, especially if you don't get a lot of sunlight. So that's a cool fact. Okay, so let's go to our first topic and let's dive in. So mental performance in high pressure environments. Okay. So like I said, we were talking about this backstage, and we were talking about high pressure environments, and, a doctor, a surgeon, anybody in a hospital setting, healthcare, that's a high pressure environment. Military, fire, police. I have a background working with them as well. But I have to say also, the high pressure environment can also be the support team with the person that is in a high pressure situation, working in corporate, and you're at the top of the ladder, or if you're even in middle management. Like, how can you describe the scope of mental performance in a high pressure environment?
Yeah, so starting out with, I said that my master's is in performance psychology. It traditionally comes from sports psychology, but performance psychology encompasses any high pressure environment. You have to think, not like you mentioned, it's not just a CEO, it's not just someone in the corporate space, it's not just an athlete or the military. It is anyone who's feeling that pressure. The one go-to that I always talk about is, think of yourself as an electrician and you are installing the lights on a football field and you are 20, 50 feet above ground. That's high pressured because you have to think of not only your safety, you got to make sure that you feel secure in the gear that you have. You have to trust the gear that you have, but you're also dealing with electrical, you're dealing with, wind, the climate, whatever that environment is. And so, talking about high pressure environments, it's all about from your perspective of what is pressure. And you started to talk about stress a little bit, and stress is not a bad thing. It can be a bad thing if you have an overabundance of it. But so, mental performance, especially in high pressure environments, is really finding that balance between, okay, I've got a lot of these stressors. How do I manage those stressors? How do I absorb? How do I process it? And it takes multiple parts of your brain to be able to do that. And so being able to acknowledge, oh, is this danger? Is this something that I should be fearful of? Is this, a hazard, for my kids? Like, I have to take those things into consideration wherever I am, whatever I'm doing. So high pressure environmental cues are all, a part of the mental performance process and mental performance game. And your lived experience indicates how you're processing that information.
So let's just say, I love that you said all that too, because my brain's like boop, 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 with all the questions. So let's just say that you are someone that comes from maybe childhood trauma or, early adulthood, high pressure anxiety. And
Mm.
now you're in this new workplace environment. So now your perceived um, thought process or what the stimulus is going to be different than maybe somebody that didn't have that past experience. And I know you said you meet people where they are. How much of that trauma needs to be healed before they can move forward, or it doesn't matter?
It's twofold. You can't wait to heal in order to do, right? Like,
Mhm.
we're all very ambitious people. I'm assuming you're ambitious, audience, because you're following you and they're listening to you. And so we're all ambitious people. So we can't stay put and try to heal. Healing is a process. It's also community driven. It's not just personal. You need your entire community to help you heal and become resilient. And so you can't stay where you are. We talked a little bit in the background about movement, like you have to move through it, you have to move that energy. But especially like in a work environment, you have to understand or take time to acknowledge and understand, hey, I reacted a certain way in a meeting. I stood up and I said something that I maybe wasn't otherwise comfortable with. You have to acknowledge why that's happening, why you're feeling that way, why after you do something that didn't go as planned, why you're upset. Emotions are through everything. I've had so many people tell me, "Oh, I'm not emotional. I'm unemotional." But that's an emotion. Like, you have emotions. It's just how you explain that emotion, how you comprehend the context in which that is coming from. I think it's super, super important to have that level of self awareness of, okay, maybe my reaction isn't about today. It might be about something else, but how can I, in this moment, change my reaction to get the outcome that I want? I talk to people a lot about effective communication. And effective communication at its core, at the most simplest form, is getting what you want out of the situation. How can I communicate with you to get the result that I want on the other end? And so I'm not necessarily changing who I am as a person to communicate. I'm communicating it in a way that's going to have more impact and have an effectiveness to it. And so acknowledging your past and understanding what you've gone through, and that desire to heal is incredible. It's amazing if you have that desire to heal. If you don't, acknowledge where you've been, acknowledge where you've come from, and learn some tools on how to manage your expectations within that environment, within that boardroom, that meeting room, so that you can react appropriately to that setting and not based on everything else that you've experienced in your life.
So it's really that separation of taking yourself, or that, one, recognizing what the trigger is. And maybe even before that, physiological responses, right? Maybe you feel yourself getting heated up, or you feel yourself, your mind going somewhere else, or, there's a lot of different, check engine lights that go on before we actually explode or say something that's out of a different, it's like you're deflecting, off of something. So what would you say is, what tool would you say that you teach? And I know everybody's different, so it can't be the same throughout, but what is a tool that most people, or you teach the most to your clients or your teams, to help them recognize what that trigger is and how to emotional intelligence, right? To how you can regulate yourself before talking.
Yeah, I was actually on a webinar yesterday with a professor that said emotional regulation is 100% learned. We don't come out of the womb. We don't, come from our mothers and know how to emotionally regulate. That's not something that our quote unquote lizard brain knows how to do. That's something that we have to learn. And so, from that perspective, I'm going to give you a real world story that's happening right now. So, before you started doing your introduction and had like the title screen going on, I started to get heart palpitations because public speaking is terrifying to me. I'm an introvert. I know you can't tell from this, but I am at my soul an introvert. So this is very draining for me. So I gave you two signals there, that I'm having heart palpitations. So I'm having some kind of anxiety. And so before you even introduced me, I was doing breathing exercises to calm and regulate my nervous system. But then also I know that it's going to burn my energy by being in this conversation. So after this, I'm probably going to go walk in my garden. I'm going to go have some time in my greenhouse, because again, move through it, push that energy through your system, because the more you try to hold on to it, I think someone's mentioned about you're not a stone. You have all these emotions that you have to, emotional intelligence is, and emotional regulation is, how do I respond to these emotions rather than shut down and hold them close to heart? Like, the more you try to control your emotions, the more they control you. And so by having some tactics like breathing's like the most incredible thing that we always forget to go to. But breathing, walking as having that repetitious behavior is very meditative. For me, because of my trauma, sitting in mindful meditation and being quiet is the worst thing that I can do for my system. And so you have to find something that's repetitious to be able to be in that meditative state. And so for me, I was taught by my grandma how to bake. And so kneading the dough and sitting there for 5 to 10 minutes kneading dough is more meditative for me than sitting quietly in thought, because I end up ruminating if I'm sitting in thought. Instead, I'm connecting with my heritage through a repetitious behavior. And so I can't give you a one size fits all solution to any of it, just as much as you can't, in fitness say, okay, you are going to have the most amazing body if you do these 4 movements, right? Like, you have to understand what your body is doing, where you've come from, so you know what works for you, and don't listen to the influencers online who are saying this is self-care, this is prescribed for you, because it's not. You have to listen to your own body. You have to listen to your own system.
I love that you brought that up, because there's so many things that, everybody makes their own content. Like, to each his own, right? But the things that what I eat in a day, like just what are we doing here? Because that is very personal to so many different things. What is your meat? What is your TED? What is like your food? What are you eating? Because food costs calories too. So there's so many things that go into it. And you see this person who maybe you idolize because of the way they look, and you don't understand that, like, where they are and where they've come from, right? And sometimes when I meet people, they're like, well, they compare themselves to 20 years ago. And I'm like, you can't compare yourselves to 20 years ago. That's like, comparing apples and steak. They're not even the same macronutrient. Like, you can't do that to yourself. And it doesn't mean you can't get the where you want to go. You just have to know where you are. Like, use what you have. Start where you are. When you do those, going down those rabbit holes. And I'm saying with you, like, okay, meditation. So I just can't get 5 minutes of my life back. And I just ruminated on the thing I didn't want to ruminate on. And, so when I was listening to something, teaching my kids, it's like, smell the roses and blow out the candles, smell the roses and blow out the candles. Right. I do that to myself all the time too. And it's how you can regulate, but the oxygen to your brain immediately helps get into that vagus nerve or that parasympathetic, your rest and digest. So you have to feel like it's not a one size fits all, and you have to try different things. Right. So if maybe baking's your thing. For me, I love being in sunlight and moving. That's what grounds me. Prayer grounds me. You have to find what works for you, not what works for everybody else. Because if you go down that road, then you're not going to find what works for you. And I love that you brought up the deep breathing. I mean, that's immediately you feel the health palpitation and you habit stack that with the breathing. It's like light bulb went off. I already have my, tool shed of things that I can help regulate my body. So now here's what I can do. And it takes practice. It's not like, okay, I'm going to deep breathe once and it's going to cure everything. It's consistency. So I love that you brought all of that up, which leads us to our next topic, which is burnout recovery and sustainable prevention. I think we're just touched on it, but what else could you say about this topic that really hits home for you?
I think one of the biggest things that I've experienced with burnout recovery and prevention, we talk about resilience, but what is resilience? Resilience is the ability to bounce back. It's not restrictive. It's not avoidance. It's taking everything in stride and being able to bounce back. And so when I talk about burnout recovery and sustainable tactics, there's two components to it. It's your own personal resilience. How can I, as an individual, bounce back and bounce back faster? What tools do I have in my toolbox that I can tap into? But also another part of it that we don't talk as much about is the community aspect of it, that our ability to rebound, our ability to bounce back is also through our support systems and our support networks. So thinking, okay, I'm going to isolate myself and I'm going to go, sit and be at a quiet meditation by myself for an extended period of time. You're not getting that community aspect. We are communal animals. We like to be with other people. And I know I've gotten resilience from a lot of people for that alone. That no, I do great on my own. I do great by myself. But yeah, you might think that, but let's see if that has sustained over time. Are you able to consistently show up the way that you want to be and present yourself? Or are you going to rebound back into that burnout? And so everything that I teach is all about creating systems and processes. It's creating patterns. Our bodies and minds love repetition. We love patterns. And so the more that we can create patterns and that predictability for our system, for our minds, the more flexible we can be when things actually, shit hits the fan. We need to have that flexibility. But our minds don't think of it as safety without having that consistency and without having that pattern to recognize, okay, maybe this one thing is off. How do I respond to it? Versus I have 20 things at a time that I'm trying to respond to. A good example is having a bazillion tabs open on your computer. Like at some point, your computer is going to be like, wait, we're over capacity. We're gonna shut down now. So like thinking of it in that terms, like how many browsers or how many tabs do you need to close down to recover? How many tabs should you have open at any given time to where you can function without burning out in the process? And so it's really all about finding that balance for you of what is successful, what looks successful to you, what feels successful to you, without overextending yourself or underdoing it, because that's a side of performance that we don't necessarily always talk about, is not doing enough. We talk about doing too much, but there's a balance in there. That's why, like for me, I need to have multiple different businesses because I need to be able to switch through different things that expand my mind, that push me in different directions. And so I can turn off this one and start this one, and turn off this one and start this one, because that's the pattern and that's the system that works for me. So it's finding those systems for yourself and within community that work and help you, keep balance.
Yeah. So I love that you brought up community, because we talked about this backstage. Jesse and I are doing a retreat. So we were talking about community, how we want to bring women together and help rise together, because we said this backstage too. We are conditioned by our environment, and sometimes we hate on each other for I don't know what, but it's competitive, right? Especially when I'm sure you see this a lot in tech. I'm sure you see this a lot with your clients. And why can't we just, your seat, it looks different than mine, but why can't we sit at the same table? Why can't we learn from each other? And I think, like you said, it takes time, right? Sometimes you feel like you're that salmon that's swimming upstream, but it takes that pattern disruption to change, right? So if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, it's not working. We have to change our patterns. We have to change our habits. And guess what? It's really easy to stay in that same pattern. It's a lot harder to switch lanes and to say, I'm going to try something different. Especially when you talk to a high performer, we are so good at our own stories. We are like A plus B equals C. There's no in between. And this is what it is, because that's what worked for me 15 years ago. And I've been doing it for 15 years. And you're like, well, the whole world's changed in 15 years. It changes second day to day, and why not have that community aspect, and why not bring us together to rise to the top? And I think that we can do it. It's just that we have to have those individuals that are like, hey, you're coming with me. We're going to change lanes. Yes, it's going to be scary. Yes, you're going to feel a lot of things, but you know what? Emotions are energy in motion. Let's go. Right. And it's not going to look like that every day, but take the charge when you can. So if you're talking about finding the people that enhance your life and finding the people that drain your life. So we were talking backstage a bit about cutting out those relationships. How would you go about that? I mean, it was something that really sparked interest for you. So maybe we can touch on that now.
Yeah, it sparked interest for me because in my own healing journey, I have had to move beyond people who have been in my life for years and years. Also, a big part of it as well is as an adult and trying to make connections with other adults and form new friendships. What I have found is that I put in a lot of effort because it's so valuable to me to form those relationships. And you get a lot of ghosting, or I'm going to do this in my time and my timeline doesn't match your timeline. And at the end of the day, that's where boundaries come in of I'm going to put in so much effort. And if you are not reciprocating that effort, then we've got to cut ties, or I have to manage my expectations of what to get out of this relationship. And so that's where it really sparks for me, because people are going to show you their true colors up front. There's a famous quote that's going around right now a lot that when people show you who they are, trust them the first time. And so that's really where it's how do you show up authentically as you and try to form those bonds that you want while maintaining your peace. And so that's where your boundaries come in of, okay, this person is behaving how they want to behave. Great, let them. But my experience is going to be, or how I react to that experience is going to be reflective of what I'm willing to take. Excuse me. And so from that perspective, you have to shed those relationships. Like you were talking about how you have to shed that idea of, I can consume this many calories, or I'm going to process this in the same way. We mentally have to shed what we think is going to happen and how we think our lives are going to be in the future, and live within the context of what you are in currently. You can change the outcomes based on your behavior, but thinking to specifically to the question of relationships is that you have to manage, you can only manage yourself. So you have to manage your expectations around relationships. And if those relationships aren't serving you, then sometimes it's time to let them go. And sometimes it's family, sometimes it's a best friend from childhood. But you like, yeah, let
Sometimes
them
it's
just,
the boss.
yeah, sometimes it's the boss, but you can't change how they act, but you can
Right.
change how you respond to it.
Yeah. I mean, the power is when you own your power, you have the control over your own emotions, right? The minute that you react to something in an unfavorable way in your mind, right? Then the power is taken away from you. So how can you, take your power back? And maybe there's a person that it really gets under your skin. We all have those people, right? I love people, but there are some people I'm like, ooh, our energy does not jive. And do you just avoid them, or you just manage your expectations that you know what you're going to get, they might trigger you, and you process that about why they might trigger you. They remind you of somebody that triggered you in the past. I don't know. There's so many different ways to look at it. But if you're in a situation, let's put you in the hot seat a little bit now. If you're in a situation and you're meeting with somebody that you have to meet with, but maybe it's a workplace environment or whatever, that they are going to get under your skin because of something that's happened. How can you manage yourself in a way? And I know it takes practice, but what tactics could you use in that moment to take your power back?
The first thing that comes to mind is visualization.
Ooh, love it.
Visualization is not, this is going to be the outcome. Visualization is knowing, okay, I know that these are the steps that I'm going through, and this is how I'm going to go through those steps to get to that outcome. So from a tactical standpoint, if I know that I'm going to be triggered, just as you would on a YouTube video or on a TikTok, you say trigger warning. If you're going to be talking about something that could trigger someone, you have to desensitize yourself before you go into that situation. It's all about the preparation beforehand. So if you know that person really irritates you, really gets under your skin, acknowledge that, prepare yourself for that, because when it actually happens, it's not going to be as impactful if you've already done the prep work. That might be a week before that meeting. That might be 2 days before that meeting. That might be 5 seconds before that meeting. Either way, you are doing baby steps to help your system to not respond to that, because ultimately what you're trying to do is regulate your nervous system. And so by being able to acknowledge what you expect to happen, in that instance where something doesn't happen, you're going to surprise yourself. And so there's a very, very big bonus and advantage to desensitizing yourself, just as much as, like I mentioned, how I get heart palpitations coming into these conversations. I had them for maybe 30 seconds today, whereas previously it would have been the entire conversation. And so over time, I have slowly desensitized myself to, okay, this is not danger. It's not the most scariest experience. And so anytime you're going into a triggering environment, you have to do the prep work beforehand before you even get there. It's just like, talking about it in the physical space and in the weightlifting, or, even like a bodybuilder. You don't show up as a bodybuilder one day and you're flexing your muscles and you feel great. Like there's so much prep work that you do beforehand to get you through that door. And so whether that's a business meeting, a luncheon, a networking group, whatever that is, you have to do the prep work ahead of time to get you there. Otherwise, you are reacting to the situation versus, enjoying or experiencing that situation.
So being proactive, that is the ticket.
Yes.
In a reactive world, we have to really consciously make an effort to be proactive. And I also love that you brought up bodybuilding, because in a former life, I was a bodybuilder. And the prep to go on to 5 minutes on stage is hours in the gym, hours, scheduling out your food. Your whole life is centered around fitness and nutrition, but also you have a life because this is something you pay for. It's like, it's not like you want to be a professional athlete, right? So it's posing, it's the whole package, but you prep for hours, days, months for 5 minutes on stage.
Usain Bolt talks about how he did years, decades of preparation for 4 seconds.
4 seconds. And if you think about that in that moment of time, and you're like, well, I don't have time. I don't have time is the biggest lie we tell ourselves. And, and priority management and time management are not the same. And we make time for things that we value. So when you don't make time for your health and wellness, when you don't make time to prep yourself before a meeting, when you don't make time to understand what's going on and what's triggering you, then how can you go in with your best self?
But I'm going to even challenge that and say you will make time. You will make time either to do the prep work, or you're going to make time in the effort that takes to recover afterwards. Mm-hmm. So the time is going to be there, but how you spend your time is up to you.
Yeah. And I say that all the time too. I say, your health and wellness has the biggest ROI. It is your savings account, is your insurance plan. It's a high yield savings account, because when the crap does hit the fan, you're going to be thanking your lucky stars for having that muscle, for having that mobility, for being healthy on the back end. And we don't always have to wait for that crappy moment in our life to think of like why I didn't take care of my health. And I was talking to a financial advisor too, and he was telling me that the most money we spend when we retire is in healthcare. So you either pay for it now with time and energy, because that's still a high currency, or you pay for it later. And then you don't get to leave that legacy. You don't get to enjoy that time with your family. You don't get to live the life that you want to live, pain-free and healthy, because you didn't take the time to do it. And like you said, you're paying for it either way. Either, is it voluntary to put that effort in now, or is it going to be reactive and it's involuntary and you're just going to just have to take it on the chin? So, which brings us to our next topic, which is, drum roll, trauma-informed leadership in today's workplace. I think that's a good segue into this topic. So how would you tie all of that in, and what would you call trauma-informed? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so trauma-informed means that you are acknowledging that there are other things outside of what's in front of you playing a role in that experience. So being a trauma-informed leader does not mean you instantly become your employee's therapist by any means. It is acknowledging that they have other shit going on. They're a mom at home. They are juggling with, to put you on the spot, with their husband being deployed. Like there are other things going on in people's lives. And so trauma-informed leadership acknowledges that we've all been through some shit. And so we need to understand and be respectful of that. And so just as much as we were talking before about being in a room presenting and acknowledging, okay, I am reacting the way that I am based on other experiences, a leader is understanding that you are reacting based on your other experiences. So it goes from the me context to the you context. And so within a workplace, like that is critical to understanding or being conducive to high productivity, is understanding that there's other things at play outside of what is directly in front of you.
Yeah. And I think the more right, and maybe taking yourself out of the situation to have that empathy, sympathy for other people can go a long way, because you acknowledge where they're coming from. And also, you know, vulnerability. Sometimes I tell myself that I'm allergic to being vulnerable. I don't like it. It makes me super uncomfortable, but that's when I know that I have to do more of it and push myself a little bit more, because I have found throughout the years that that's the glue that connects people, right? Like we're all human here. And I know it's a cliche thing to say, but you may see these people on these, LinkedIn or social media reel and think that they have it all, but you just see a snapshot of their life and not all of the things that took to get to that place. And also, what kind of filter is it? Did we really see the whole story here? And we get desensitized by our own feelings of seeing something else. I'm like, why can't we have that? Right. And then we're like desensitized to like what actually is going on in front of our face, and how do we deal with that if we're just looking at these people and comparing ourselves to them, I mean, I know sometimes leadership being vulnerable is a slippery slope. But how would you go about that? Oh, hey, Anthony. How would you go about that as a leader to stay informed, but also to be vulnerable?
Yeah, and I love and appreciate that you brought up vulnerability. And I think I've kind of come up with a really good analogy. It's still a work in progress, so bear with me.
Mhm.
But I was actually talking to someone recently about vulnerability within a social media context of like, how do I show up authentically as myself without overexposing or overextending who I am, and becoming so vulnerable that I feel like you're seeing me run around naked. And
Yeah.
so I like to picture it like a house. And you just made this new friend and you invited them over. You're probably going to start out maybe barbecue in the yard, hanging out outside. Eventually, when you feel a little bit more comfortable, you're going to let them into the house and hang out in the living room and maybe watch a movie or some TV or something. Maybe go into the kitchen and cook. But only once you feel totally secure with them will you let them, oh, yeah, go grab something from my bedroom, because that bedroom is your sacred space. And
Mm.
so I think of vulnerability in that same context of my most vulnerable self that I feel so exposed is only going to be between my partner, my therapist, and my super, super small group of friends and that intimate circle. So thinking of like your boss or manager or employees for that matter, you're probably going to have a barbecue in the yard. Maybe they'll come in the house. Maybe they need to use the bathroom or something. You never know, but they're never going to go into your sacred space. So you can show up vulnerable without telling them every nitty gritty detail of your life. And so that's how I approach vulnerability, whether it's on social media, whether it's in a business context. If it serves a purpose in the context of the conversation, if it has an intent behind it, then by all means be vulnerable. But if it's going to leave you feeling exposed or
Mm.
feeling insecure about yourself, then maybe that's not something that you expose to the masses, and publicly. So you have to have some of those other boundaries there to say, okay, this is something I feel comfortable talking about. This is something I don't feel comfortable talking about. Like I have absolutely no problem talking about the most controversial conversations, things that have happened in my life, but I'm not going to spill every single gritty detail about my experience. And we can connect on a human level that, oh, you've been through some shit, I've been through some shit. Like we can connect and be vulnerable in that space without having to know every little detail. And so when it comes to trauma informed leadership, it's all about creating that safe space while maintaining your boundaries. So knowing when to push your employee to say, hey, I think you reacted in this situation, maybe because of something else, and I would like to just sit here and talk with you about it. Or, hey, I think you probably need to see a therapist or something because this was a problem in this scenario. So it's knowing and having that emotional intelligence of how to approach that situation in a compassionate way.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up too, because sometimes when you know your own strengths, right? So I was reference my husband because he sometimes is non-emotional about things. But I think he's conditioned by his environment. Like if he's in charge of 350 people on a ship, you can't be emotionally charged about making a big decision, right? He's an introvert and that's just his thing. And I'm like emotion everything. I'm like, so we meet each other in the middle. But to that note, when people get emotional around him, he knows what resources to go to because he knows that maybe he's not best suited for that situation. Not that he couldn't handle it, but there might be someone that could have a little bit more experience and compassion than he had, or something like that, right? And I'm not saying he's emotionless, he's not the Tin Man, but he just knows where his strengths and his weaknesses are as part of a team. And when you're in a team, and when you are at the top of the food chain, so to speak, then you have to know who you can lean on. Maybe emotions isn't one of your strong suits, so maybe you can delegate that to somebody that can help somebody and better suited for that. So as a leader, knowing your people.
But like, how many times have you felt like he was unemotional, but you knew what he was trying to convey?
Oh yeah, all the time.
That's
Yeah.
emotions. It's
Yeah.
just how it presents itself is different. And yes, he's probably conditioned to, be more reserved about it. But
Yeah.
even the most reserved people still convey emotions. You just have to be
Body
able to
language.
read them. Yeah, absolutely.
Body
Even
language.
even the lack of body language
Mhm.
is a part of it as well. And so I think there's a way to challenge it and a way to not challenge it, like there's a good balance there. But as
Yeah.
a leader, you have to be able to be secure in yourself and know your boundaries and know your limitations and know when to say, hey, I need to pass this along to someone who has the skill set to support this person or support the situation. And maybe that means, hey, acknowledging I need more education, I need more knowledge, I need to learn some new skills on how to negotiate, how to manage, how to, acknowledge what this person is going through without bearing it on my own shoulders.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also situations he come up when sailors have had a lot of personal stuff going on, and immediately he's the first person to say, "Hey, I'm going to get you in touch with so and so because they're the ones that can help you get that trip back home because your parent is on their deathbed, or your wife is having a baby, or your husband needs you right now because of XYZ." So it's really just kind of like you have to go through those experiences to understand, like, you have to grow, right? You have to grow from those experiences and know where your limitations are. And I think being a leader, that takes time, just like finding out what habits work for you. That
But I
takes
mean,
time.
like, every time we talk about leadership, we always are like, okay, who is the best leader? Who has the best leadership skills? And it's never the person who does everything and knows everything, right?
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
higher you get in education, the more you realize I don't know anything, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's knowing your limitations, but I'm going to listen. I'm going to hear what someone has to say. I'm going to pull my resources and I'm going to have a network of support. It's not on my shoulders as the leader alone to offer everything to everyone. I can't be everywhere, all things, and still exist on my own as my own individual. The best leaders have resources, they have a network, they know who to pull from, when to pull from, so that their team feels needed, they feel wanted. And that's all about psychological safety as well, is like making a conducive environment to say, hey, I don't know everything. I need other people who do know more than me or know something strategically more than me. Like, that is all about being a good leader and having those good leadership skills.
Yeah. Knowing that it's okay to not do it all, nor should you, like that's a great way to burn out.
Yeah,
It's trying to do it all the things and not
absolutely.
leaning on people. And I know I learned that the hard way as being a military spouse. And when I first, got into this life, I knew nothing about it. And I was like, I just got to do all the things and I'm going to be fine. And I didn't want to ask for help. And that's like a trauma that I had to deal with, is that, like, you don't ask for help. Asking for help is not a weakness. It's actually a strength. And if someone looks down on you for asking for help, then that's their stuff. That's not yours, right? And that's how you learn, and that's how you grow. And then maybe the next time you don't need as much help because you know what to do this time, because maybe you're kind of greened to the situation. So, there's so many different ways to talk about this, and I think that we could talk about it on and on and on. So Stephanie, where can people get in touch with you? Do you have anything launching? What's coming down the pipe for Stephanie High?
I do everything. I don't do all the things. I come from a marketing and business development background. So I am across basically every social media platform. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I am relaunching my podcast just to have some, conversations. So if anybody wants to be on that, I want to have conversations about the intersection between performance and trauma, and how you have bounce back and show up today, and what skills you've brought in that process. Check me out at kaizencatalyst.com. I have a self-assessment there that you can go through and see where you're at in your performance journey and what skills you might want to learn.
Ooh, I love that. I think I might take that. And if you're looking for a guest, I would love to be on your podcast. So please let me know. We can change roles here. But not really conversation, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for all that. So I'm sorry, your Instagram handle is
Kaizen Catalyst across the board.
Across the board. Got it. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And I've learned so much just in this short amount of time. And I know that there were certain things that went off in my head. It's like, ding, okay, that's a good thing. Definitely keep doing the deep breathing, because sometimes you fall back on old habits and you're like, why can't I breathe right now? My heart's,
But I'll even add to that. Like, I've had a client who's like, okay, you taught me box breathing, but I don't really actually use it. Like, I've never actually used it when I'm under pressure. Find the breathing exercise that works for you. Like, right. Don't take the one thing that I throw out as like, hey, maybe try this. Like, go explore it yourself and try different things and try and figure out what works. And if you're not using it, it means it's not working.
Right. Well, you have it. Yeah. I love also nostril breathing. There's like 30 different filters in your nose to get oxygen to your brain. You got to find what works for you. Be willing to be a student, be willing to learn, be willing to change some things, because if it's not working, then doing the same thing is not going to change things. So I love that.
I'm going to leave you with this little tidbit that blew my mind. Is that your brain is just like anything else in your body. It's your ligaments, your muscle, it's your muscular system. That's your brain. Your mind is what's inside of it. It's what moves all of this. It's what triggers all of this. Your mind needs to be flexible. It needs to have that neuroplasticity, whereas your brain is going to be the same size no matter what you do. It's just like your bones. So instead of trying to mess with your brain, have flexibility with your mind.
Yes, I love that. That was a great way to leave us with that nugget of love. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining, Stephanie. And I hope that we get to do this again soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was absolutely wonderful.
Love it. All right, we'll see you backstage. Bye. Thank you.